What are we looking at? What are all those bombs doing on there? Are those missions?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Where?
In front of the window, on top of the flag.
Oh, he's right here.
How about planes?
Yeah.
Are there any planes in the aircraft?
No, would that be like planes shot down or something?
Yeah. Oh, they had practice. With that crew, with how many bombings? It was the very end of the war. They got high cock.
Yeah.
It was crinkling. And the bombardier was, see, we have a little, you had a little pressure tank full of oxygen.
Those little balls.
Little balls.
Yeah.
And I had mine, I was ready to, what I didn't realize was that this guy was giving me such a bad time, he was petrified. I didn't have time to hook on the pad on both sides, you know, the
parachute?
The chest pack. I only hooked it on one side, thank God for that. Thank me. And so he kept kicking me in the ass with his cowboy boots, and he had a pair of sharp toes there, you know. And I got the hell out so fast I didn't even get rid of my blue. I looked like a monkey. I had this blue material, English heating material for your suit, you know, a blue flying suit that you're supposed to put a canvas top on, you know, a canvas coverall, and here's this cord sticking out. So I looked the monkey, you know. So anyway, here I am, I'm floating through the air, and I don't have a parachute. And don't ask me how I got out, because I don't remember. I lost my my bubble, my little tank of the oxygen, and I'm floating through the air. And I don't know how long I've been floating, but the ground looks pretty close.
What time of day was it?
It was close to noon, maybe 1 o'clock or so. And I think I see figures down, but I'm not sure. Everything's blurry, you know. I'm half out of it, you know. So, but I'm not half out enough. I reached up and I looked, and there's this goddamn pack following me down. And I don't have the presence of mind, which I can understand very well, I haven't taken morphine, of hooking that on to the other hook. So I decided to hold it. Can you imagine holding a parachute with that heavy spring on it? I mean, it just tore the hell out of my styloid process, or whatever you want to call it. The bones, the wrist bones. And it opened up with such a pop that I never thought, I thought two things. I never thought I'd make you or Marcia, that's number one. And I never thought I'd be able to use this hand again or anything. Who knows where I was going? I could have gone into a river or something, been you know, drowned. So I landed in a grove, a pine grove of some kind. I always remember, I always thought this was a Black Hawk State Park. I always remembered, you know, with the pine trees and the paths. And I fell through the tree, which collapsed my chute, which didn't do my back any good. Laid down, and from that day on, I didn't move for 3 weeks. And anyway, I look over there, and there is the burning airplane. Can't be over a city block away from me.
Wow.
And the bullets are going off. The 50 caliber shells are going off. And it's got 10 500-pound bombs that are fused. And this is a rural...
Like a delayed action, or is it an impact kind of fuse?
I have no idea.
But anyway, this thing could have taken
I have no
more than
idea.
a city block out.
Maybe I owe history an apology. Maybe they weren't. I beg your pardon.
Because you hadn't gotten your...
We hadn't gotten to any we didn't know what the hell we were going to do yet, you know. No.
But what does a fire like that do to that explosive?
I don't know whether it gets hot enough. I don't know what that. Maybe it just burns like gunpowder. Gunpowder, when exposed to the air, will give out a terrific whoosh, but I don't think it explodes. It has to be contained, doesn't it? I don't. So anyway, I'm laying there, and these guys come up with a swastika, and they take a look at my dog tags. And if that ain't bad enough, I got a mezuzah hanging on to my dog tags. You know your father. I'm not a religious person. I'm a very superstitious type person, I think, I tell myself. And one of our relatives from on the Waxenberg side, Mary Waxenberg, that owned the department store in the New York store in downtown Moline. I think I drove you by the empty mausoleum there, the empty derelict New York store. They owned that, and she was the wealthy empress of the clan. And she had mailed this to me, and I was wearing it at the time I ditched. So I thought it was a pretty good luck charm, considering what a really non-believer I turned out to be. You know, a tremendous ethnic tradition, you know what I mean? But not on a personal CPA to client basis. I think I've explained that before. But, you know, I'm a Jew, and I certainly was born one, and I was with a Brit, and I certainly will die as one, buried as one, and but you know, some of the activities of some of my people I'm very ashamed of, and some I'm very proud of. I think it's like anybody knows. Anyway, this guy comes up and says, "Ach, das ist ein Jude." And I says, "Jawohl." I said, "Ich bin ein Jude, aber ich bin Amerikaner Offizier." And just then the captain comes up. And he says to the guy, "Are you the?" He says, "Yeah." Guy takes a big gob of spit, hacks it up, and it's right in my face. And I can't move. What would I have done anyway? I don't know. Who the hell knows? Who cares? And a little girl went to a little riverlet, a little brooklet there, and took her handkerchief and wet it, and she wiped my face off. He didn't say a word to her, that son. He says, "Mein Freund, bist nicht Amerikaner, Engländer, Franzos, Russ, Pole, nein, nor Jude." And I said, "Ich bin Amerikaner Offizier." He says, "Das gas nix helfen." Nothing's going to help you. In other words, you're through, buddy. Why they didn't pull out a 45 and do it right then and there, I don't know. They enjoyed it. They saw me suffering, and they enjoyed it. And I went to get the morphine out of, I could move some of my arms. I couldn't move my spinal area. And so they went to get, I went to get the morphine, Surette they called it, a syringe, but they called it a Surette. And all the wonderful custodians, I don't know how the hell we won the war. We just had more shit than they did. And it was dried up. Absolutely. Well, of course, but the parachutes didn't go with the plane. The parachutes you checked out, and you checked in. But weren't they great? Not to check a Surette after every mission. God knows. Well, it opened. So they got us. They got an ambulance. There was this road there, and they stuck me in an ambulance. They had a stretcher, and they took me down to the fire station. That's where they were combination firemen and also the Volkssturm, which was the People's Army, the People's
Militia.
Militia, right? National Guard. And that was it. And so they took me down to the fire station. And they took the the rope from the fire bell. And somehow or other they went up and they unfastened the bell rope. And they made a noose out of it. They're going to lynch me right there, you know. There was a beam, you know, an open beam, you know. And they threw the rope over the beam, and I said, "You can lose pissing." So my bladder saved my life. And so they let me pee. Of course, I got more on my flying suit and everything else than I did in the bucket. And in comes the Kemper Cavalry. You're welcome, Kemper Insurance Company. These are the German pilots. I don't think they were Austrian, because they just wham, wham, like that, you know what I mean? Got out of the way. They said, "Was sagen Sie?" I said, "Beobachter, America." "Oh, Beobachter, oh." He said, "Fine." They said, they took the noose off, took the door off the fire station, got a two-wheel pony cart, stuck me on a pony cart, and took me to the Catholic hospital. They didn't have any barracks around there or something. They must have had a small unit, you know, a flying unit there somewhere, because they were there, you know. Of course, a couple hours had gone by now with all this stuff, so. And I don't think they were that crazy about me, you know, they loved me that much. Even the Geneva Convention didn't mean shit. But how could they let a Beobachter, which is a navigator observer that knows all the codes, you know, what the hell did they know? They were fighter pilots, they didn't know shit, you know. And here's a Beobachter, a first lieutenant. I'd gotten, by the way, I'd gotten promoted, which shows you how important it meant to get promoted from first lieutenant to, from second to first. You know, it was like getting promoted from janitor to doorknob polisher or something, you know. Anyway, and they took me to the hospital. And I had outside of the pain, of course, they had a lot of Ukrainians down there. And see, Ukrainians, a lot of them are Catholics. And they had Ukrainians down there that they had, quote, liberated of the Ukrainian army, you know, men and women. And they were there carrying people, you know, they carried from one to the other. What do they call those people? Orderlies. And the first thing they did was lift up my hospital gown and make fun of my size of my you-know-what, because I don't think any of them had ever seen a circumcised penis before, and it does lend a certain amount of extra length to it, you know, the foreskin. And anyway, so they took turns, both the guys and the girls. And I wasn't in the mood for any activity of any kind with pain and fear, so you can imagine the size. So anyway, they took me in, treated me what they didn't call me a Yuda, they called me a Zhid, Z-H-I-D. Z-H-I-H-D, I think, Zhid. That was what they call it in Russian and in everything else, you know, the Yahud, no, that's Arabic, Yahud. Zhid. Zhid, yeah, right, okay, fine. And they took me in, and the head radiologist came to me, or the orthopedic guy, or they had a complete hospital there in Murzuschlag, Austria. And I took this, and they took these, and guy says to me, he says, "Put this in a cast right away." And this crossbar just itched the I never could keep it. That's why it's so crooked today. So anyway, the guy says to me in Austrian German, oh, couldn't understand shit. He says, you got a blah, 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 subluxation. Well, shit, I come from Davenport, Iowa, for crying out loud. All you do is go to the Palmer School of Chiropractic, and they'll fix your blah, 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 blah subluxation in 3 or 4 treatments. What he didn't say was, it's a fracture subluxation. That means the bones, well, we've gone into that, the bones are cracked, C6, C7, C8, they're all cracked up or something. So by the time I came to San Antonio, a year later, there wasn't too much you could do about it, was there? Except go in there and open everything up and then fuse everything. So that's another story. So anyway, I was laying there, and I said, Dank, you know, thank you very much. Dank, dear, thank you. I always say, Danke schön, whatever, yeah. And we continued. I was in that hospital for 3 weeks, and there was one nun in there, Schwester Manzueta, and Lawson Nagel, the stamp guy. I don't know whether you ever met those guys. We haven't missed anything. And I hope he sees this. Anyway, he was driving his car through Europe in, let's see, where was I? About 52 or something, 53. And he stopped in there. I gave $100 to give to that nun. And she was gone, so he put the $100 back in his pocket and brought it back to Phoenix. Which was nice. I mean, he could have lied, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, I guess he didn't need it. He was wealthy. So, took good care of me. And she asked me, can you imagine your father being mixed up in all? Doesn't this sound like a corny B movie?
It does.
Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, Gene Tenenbaum's stooge being mixed up in all this crazy stuff. I don't know. You see movies like this. And we went back, and she says to me, Lieutenant Harold. I says, ja, Schwester. She says, Essen Sie Schweinefleisch. You know what that means?
Something about swine flesh, but pig.
Do you eat Essen Sie Fleisch? Do you eat pork?
Yeah.
Okay. I says, jawohl. Warum fragen Sie mir? Oh, she says, in meine kleine Stadt, wherever she came from, you know, in Austria, the Jews, they were Orthodox, you know, they didn't know shit, you know, they were Orthodox. And they essen keine Schweinefleisch. I said, oh, I understand, yes. But I said, ich bin Amerikaner Jude, and viele Amerikaner Jude essen Schweinefleisch. A lot of Americans eat so. Anyway, they were delightful to me. They were delightful to me. But sitting in the room with me, lying in the room with me, was an American sergeant of Polish ancestry. And for him, not enough Polak jokes were written. He says to me, you're a Jew? I says, yeah. And he said, you were flying combat dangerous missions? I says, yes. He says, why is that? He says, I don't remember seeing any Jewish officers in our squadron. I said, how hard did you look? He says, well, I don't know. He said, he just didn't think of anybody, a Jew, going into combat. You people are always good at squirreling out of things. Some cases he happened to be right, but unfortunately he didn't happen to be right in my case and hundreds of thousands of other cases, you know. So anyway, now, well, for a while, of course, I didn't talk to him for a week or so because he was a plant. To me, I'm thinking, this son of a bitch isn't an American, he's a German, you know, blonde, blue-eyed, you know. And he showed me he had a hole in his belly. He had a tremendous hole in his belly. He got shot up and they dropped him overboard. They bound him up a little bit as best they could. Dropped him over the cities on the way back from a mission. He was he came from Detroit, that horrible place in Detroit where Hamtramck. Does that sound?
Yeah, that's the Polish community in Detroit.
Yeah, Hamtramck. Boy, was that were they anti-Semitic. Ooh. Anyway, now, another drama. One day the two of us are laying there. I think he's up and around. He's been there for a month or so. Well, they sewed up his belly and they shipped him off to G. So anyway, we were lying there and he looked out the window and says, "Hey, come here, Lieutenant. There's a train stopping." There is a train stopping, and I looked outside, and no train ever stops at Foggia, Italy, you know. And this is one of like the top limited or something, you know. And out comes a guy with a skull and crossbones, you know. Beautiful black uniform. I think he was a major or a minor. Beautiful riding boots, you know. SS. You know. Right out of Hollywood. You couldn't have cast anybody. And of course, he may have been out of Berlin, who knows. Comes up. Pretty soon there's a knock on my door. And he says to the Polish guy, "Rouse!" Just like that. The guy jumped 20 feet in the air, scared shitless, got out. And the guy says, "May I sit down?" Ha, 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 you know. And the guy's got an accent right out of Princeton. Not Harvard, but Princeton or Yale, you know, with a good American accent, not a Eastern type deal. Pennsylvania, you know. He says, "Okay," he says, "let's cut all the crap."
You mean to say he doesn't have any German accent to his voice?
Not a bit. I didn't care to go into his biography.
Wow.
He could have been a Bund, German-American Bund. Who knows what he could, you know.
Wow.
He could have been a plant in the U.S. for years. Who knows? He wasn't a young guy. He was 40-ish. He says, "Let's cut out the crap." He says, "You look like hell." He says, "You're beat up." He says, "We don't need you in the interrogation center." He says, "All you have to do is to answer a few questions." And he says, "and I'll ship you right to your Stalag. You'll bypass all the crap that you'll get to at Dulag Luft." I said, "Sir, my name is, I know that Polak son of a bitch is right outside the door." "Well, excuse me, all nice Polaks." I said, "Name?" I said, "My name is Tenenbom, HN, rank First Lieutenant, 694745. So he goes through a list of questions. And to make a long story a little bit shorter, I answered that way every time. Folded up his briefcase or whatever he had at the time, I don't remember that. He says, "You'll be sorry." I said, "Sir, name and so on and so forth." Got the hell out. Guy came back in. "Lieutenant," he says, "I'm certainly proud to know you." I says, "Get over where you belong," and I says, "Don't bother me." Anyway, I thought to myself, "You dirty bastard, what you're going to cost me in aggravation isn't worth And I couldn't possibly give him an opening to go back to Hamtramck and say, hey, the goddamn Jews, you know, they wilt under pressure immediately, you know. So in the meantime, we stayed in the room together because they couldn't spare any personnel for one of us at a time. So 3 weeks goes by, and all of a sudden 2 German or Austrian or what the hell they were, I don't know, GIs come in and they help me get dressed because I'm still in real bad shape. And they, this time, thank God, I'm carrying the flying suit with the tail. The parachute is long gone. Some German broad has got a nightgown, or an Austrian broad has got a nightgown or panties or something. You know, this was fine, either silk or nylon. Which is stronger, nylon? Probably nylon. That's why you couldn't get hose. Of course, you'd know. Your mother might. Couldn't get any hose during the war because they were making the hose out of nylon. So anyway.
What kind of questions did they ask you?
You know, your rank, not your rank, how many missions you flew, this and that, and who was your squadron commander, and who was this, and where were you stationed. Whole bunch, you know, the regular interrogation bullshit. They came in and they told the guy to get ready, and he couldn't speak one word of German, he said. He probably was, yeah.
Who, the Polish guy?
The Polish guy. And they took us on a small, what we used to call interurban, which means between the cities. A small trolley, like, you know. Only it wasn't small, and it was third rail type, and it was a big long son of a gun. And they took us to Vienna. No, they took us to Wiener Neustadt, in the new city, Vienna New City, which was a little suburb. And then we got on that.
Where were you at the time?
I was at...
Where did you get shot down?
What the hell's the matter? I was at Murzuschlag.
You might have said that, but where did you get shot down?
I got shot down at Murzuschlag.
And the hospital was there?
The town was maybe 5 miles away from where I got shot down. And then we got on, I don't even have a... I gave away, and this I did give away, my World Atlas, which was like 30 years, you know, everything was outdated, so I'm not going to buy a new one. But anyway, it's southwest of Vienna. Then they dropped us off at a military base. In other words, they came to pick us up. So where are we? Okay, fine. I'm at Murzuschlag. Don't ask me how I got to, or whether maybe it was the same GIs, okay, or maybe the train only ran a certain time, because the idea was to get us to, how did they get us from Murzuschlag to, it couldn't have been on in a car, in a truck, I don't know how. Oh, give me a break. Air base outside of Vienna, and I guess there must have been a, well, obviously if they had this big hospital, there must have been a good connection with the interurban, with the trolley. So they took us by trolley to the, what do you call it there, to the guardhouse, and I was stationed in the officers' side of the guardhouse, of the jail, and this guy was stationed at the other side. And we kept seeing each other. I mean, we didn't get rid of each other, the 2 POWs. And so anyway, the next morning we go to Vienna. And if you remember Innsbruck or any of those places, or the trolley cars stuck together, you know, so we get on a trolley and we go from the South Railroad Station to the North Railroad Station. and Amerikaner, you know what I mean, and here we are with all those Austrian civilians, and they had the hell bombed out of them. And here we are, you know, Americans, so we were scared to death. And finally got to the North Station, and we were put in a special drawing room or something, you know, at the end of the train, and or a room for 4, I guess that was for up-and-coming people, you know, for VIPs. And on this train are 10,000 SS troops. And your father has to go take a pee, and when you have to take a pee, you got to walk in the aisle. Oh no, they were compartments. They all were compartments. That's where the European trains, you know, compartments. And I think we were in a class. What were they? 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C, or whatever it is. We were in a pretty shitty one. Believe me, they didn't give us any top compartment. Every time I had to go take a leak or something, I had to walk the entire length of the car with all these SS guys. Oh. Finally, they got to Vienna. We get on a train, and we go to Frankfurt. Were we in Frankfurt?
For an hour or something.
Yeah. Gotta be near Wiesbaden, yeah. And anyway, from Frankfurt, then they take us to a place called Oberrussel. Oberrussell. Oberrussel, or maybe 1 L. And this was the Dulag, or interrogation Luft. Dulag camp. Interrogation camp. And you got thrown into a room, door like a refrigerator door, no windows open. The only time the window was open, you got any air, was when you went to the bathroom. When you went to the bathroom, you were, if there's somebody else waiting, you waited outside. No communication. And even if there was, you wouldn't say anything. Who the hell is this guy? And you go in, take a leak, come back out, put you in your compartment. In that compartment they have there, with the barred windows and everything else, must have been 500,000 fleas. I had never been infested, attacked, whatever you want to call it, with fleas in my life before. Fleas, I guess they were dog fleas or human fleas. I don't know what the hell they were.
Same thing.
Same thing?
But when there's no dogs around, they bite humans.
Yeah, well, they go for your pubic and head area.
Well, it's lice.
No, I guess fleas.
Uh-huh.
Fleas bite blood. Yeah, they use, okay. So and they kept asking you the same questions. Each time you slip a little. And they finally, when they get, what happened to me was, well, I never claimed to be an absolute genius, son. But this guy had me so screwed up. Not the interrogator, or not the good guy or the bad guy, but the Swiss Red Cross ID, social worker. And I had the pleasure of meeting that son of a bitch at the Stalag III convention in Dayton. Was it Dayton? When the hell do we have a Stalag III convention? In fact, I got a picture in your bathroom there. But that was I bought that. When I went was afterwards. In other words, that wasn't the year that I went, but the year of the deal, I know. Anyway, that's beside the point. And this guy confessed. He was no more a Swiss than you were. He was a Nazi, a German Nazi. Because why on earth would I have my mother's name down there? But it was to get the information back that I was okay. So the first thing he took was my GI card, my ID. What the hell do you call them? Dog tag. I had two of them. One was not to be sent back to my folks because I was alive. It was to be sent to the real Swiss. And this guy was not the real Swiss. But what could they do? In other words, at least they got access to they knew the Germans were pulling this shit off. Wasn't that bad. And what it did was it let all the cowards who really didn't give a shit, it let them off the hook because they could say, well, I'm sorry, I got hit by this by the Swiss Red Cross guys. He said, they weren't going to do anything anyway, so what difference did it make? So they had an awful lot of shit on me. And then what they did, they compared one guy to the next guy to the next guy. They knew more about our families and our camps and our squadrons than we did. You know, you interrogate hundreds and thousands of guys every day, every week, you know. Unbelievable. It was a constant deal. So after a few days, they needed my room. Get the hell out of here. So then you went and you got a complete hot shower. You got a hot shower. And you got new clothes. New. You got a laundered shirt, and you got a knitted sweater, and you got a pair of GI pants, and of course what they took, well, they took what they could from you and re-laundered it and steamed it and got the bugs out. What do they call that?
Deloused.
Deloused. And whatever they could save, they saved for you to wear it. And eventually, when you got to the prison camp, you got all new. You got new. You got an overcoat, GI overcoat. You got everything. If you were a good trader and hated chocolate, then you could end up dressing like King Farouk, whom we didn't know at the time. And I think it was 3 or 4 days, something like that. Oh, and then they fed you British porridge, oatmeal, heavy Nestle's condensed milk, sweetened condensed milk. It's like our Borden's Eagle brand, and Nestle's Eagle brand, and raisins, prunes, all from Red Cross parcels. We never had such food for days. You know, they didn't have any at the hospital. In the hospital, they had basic food. You know, bread, coffee, imitation. Real coffee. Oh, God, great. So, what else can I tell you? That was the interrogation. And it wasn't that bad. It was going to be bad. This guy, they had two guys. One guy was dressed up like Erich von, there's nobody around who'll know who I'm talking about, that's the only thing. Was dressed like...
you can say Erich von Stroheim.
Yeah.
Sure.
There would have to be a real movie buff. Who could we use today instead of Erich von Stroheim?
They don't make Nazi movies anymore.
Yeah, right. But there's this little bit of a heavy-set guy, nice-looking fella, heavy-set, plays Prussians sometimes. I can't think of his names. Shit. Anyway, this guy was all dressed up, you know, gold cross, all decorated up. And the other guy was right out of Warner Brothers. Leather hat. Leather hat, a snap brim dark felt hat, a leather coat, and it's right out of the Gestapo headquarters, probably out of the second-rate theater. Anyway, Lieutenant, as far as I'm concerned, you're an officer, he says, and you're a brave man. This man says you're a Jew, and dress up says, a good guy says he wants to take you and put you in some kind of a concentration death camp. I don't know what he's talking about. Are you listening to me? 1944. And he wants to grab, and I don't want to let him. So he says, why don't you come across it? And I gave that name, rank, serial number. And finally they let me go. He says, we got all this down here. He says, I ain't going to tell you how we got it. We got this down. She got all this down. What the hell are you asking me for? I said, you know more about me than I do. Well, he wants you to confirm it. I said, I can't. I said, I won't sign anything. I won't do it. So he says, we're going to let you out of here. You say it's okay. I said, okay, let me out of here. Fine. So they let me out. And then I went to Stalag 3. And there wasn't anybody in the whole friggin' Stalag 3 that knew me. We hadn't lost that many aircraft since I got there in April. And finally, we were the South Camp. North Camp was British. The East and West camps were GI, American. And then the Russians, I don't know where the hell the French were. They were somewhere, but they weren't around us. The Russians were out in the open, 20 below zero. They were camping out in the open, the ones that survived. God, there was no mercy. And so anyway, they had trouble identifying me. And I says, I'm a Jew. You want me to prove? He says, that don't mean nothing. He says, for Christ's sake, Tenenbom, Davenport, Iowa. There's nobody, the intelligence guys at the camp, they didn't have anybody to identify me. There were two guys from Phoenix, but there was the meat guy, Tovria, and then there was another guy, Emmett or something like that. And he was, but I didn't go to Phoenix yet. I didn't know any shit about Phoenix at Davenport. So finally, on the West Camp, I see a guy on the barbed wire. I said, Tommy? Tommy Thomas. I said, you don't know what a blessing. So I went and got, and I said, don't move. So I grabbed the guy from the intelligence, whatever they called it, the American, the S something, I think, I don't know, S2. And I said, hey, come here. And so I says, you go check that guy out. So they got permission to bring him over or something. I don't remember. It's a little hazy now. And either he okayed me or something over the barbed wire, or they brought him over. I don't remember the details. But he's the one that saved my ass. They just I was leery, this goddamn guy. He's a perfect Nazi spy. Your father, a Nazi spy. All right, so then I was all right. Then we didn't have any barracks for us. So the new guys that came in. So that's when I met, we were in tent city, huge tent city. Each tent housed maybe a couple of hundred guys or something, double deck bunks. So finally what happened is that they decided they were going to build triple deck. So when they built triple deck bunks, then we got finally taken into our own rooms. So at that time, we had a commander by the name of Colonel Goodrich. He was the senior American commander of the POWs in our area. There was a Colonel Vanneman, a general, who was a attaché at the military attaché in Berlin. And then he had himself flown over to, this is the story now, whether it's true or not, I don't, and he bailed out over a area of Germany. And he could have been shot, of course. He had, you know, full uniform. And they saw him, many guys recognized him, you know, and he says he just came over to look after the welfare of the Americans. And we think we got a little better break because there was nobody going to capture the United States. So anyway, we had at Selfridge Field, Michigan, why do I think I've said this before? They had the black pilots in the P-38s. Anyway, so these guys became fighter pilots in the P-38s. And they started to get shot down. Jesus. Anyway, and the Germans called him Neger, N-E-G-E-R. That's why I thought that Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was, there was a guy on that question and answer program, the old College Bowl or something like that. He was just perfect at it. He says, my name is Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, he really did a job on it. And at any rate, I thought Schwarzenegger means black nigger, but it turned out to mean something else. I don't know what but I asked Bill Franklin's wife, she teaches German, and she says no, she says an Ager is something, and Schwarz, a black Ager, whatever the Ager is, I don't know. So he said, you know, he said, we've got some Southern people in here. And he says, you're going to have black officers. They'll be sleeping with you. We'll be eating with you. And he said, if I hear of one incident that would give the Germans any cause for propaganda of any kind, he says, I promise this individual that he will never get out of Leavenworth while I'm still alive. You know. So we had a guy in our barracks, and David Garambone later told me that, and he lived in the Yonkers, I think David did. I never could find him, never could find his telephone number, and because I wanted a personal David, and here he is, David, he's got a goddamn business phone, David Garambone. I remember calling him from the racetrack. When you were up there,
Saratoga?
Saratoga Springs, calling me, and the next time I came back to New York, he was dead. Had a heart attack or something. He told me this one guy in the group says, well, he says, we ain't doing much. He says, they had a German guy, they had a black guy there. He said, we getting rid of the nigger and we're getting ourselves a Jew. I don't think that's much of an improvement. Anyway, you know, one guy probably says Tenenbom. It sounds Jewish. You know, it sounds like a Jewish name. Of course, in Brooklyn, you got, what do you got, 10 B-A-U-M's in the phone book, not a single B-O-M.
Maybe 100 in the phone book.
Huh?
Maybe 100.
What, Tenenboms? 5 pages I counted one time.
Oh.
Just for the hell of it.
Wow.
So, what was I going to say? I came in there, but before that, I slept in the tent city. It got cold, you know. But we ate one meal a day. I ate with the Father McDonald, Padre McDonald, was a Presbyterian. The Protestant Padre, and John Wynant Jr., his father was the ex-governor of New Hampshire, but he was at the court of St. James in Britain. He was the ambassador. He killed himself. Did the kid kill himself or the old man kill himself? I forget which. And then Ace Langberg, who said one day, he says, I'm glad my name was, he says, they were talking about fate or whatever. He says, yes, I know everything's fortuitous. He says, but I'm sure glad I was born Langberg instead of Goldberg. So anyway, I didn't keep his address. When Arthur Goldberg was appointed to the Supreme Court, I wanted to write him a letter or something and say, hey, Ace, still feel the same way about Goldberg? Of course, he probably would, you know. But those three guys I ate for about 2 months, and then we got put into our apartment, into our room. So there was 12 rooms, I think. There were a couple of private rooms on either end. The Padre had a private room. Or the Padre and Ace, I don't know. It's here.
Should we take a little break?
Yeah. And we were getting ready to go into the barracks because it was getting very cold out in Tent City. And so what would happen is that we were very clean. There was no dirt. There was no fleas. Very, very clean room and a clean barracks. They called them block, B-L-O-C-K. That was the barracks. I forget that. And the room Fuhrer, yeah, Mr. Tenenbom was our room Fuhrer. Vince, I think he was a co-pilot. And life went on. I had this huge cast for my wrist, which eventually had to come off. And I was not permitted to do any, they didn't permit me. The 11 other fellas, I don't know how many were sincere, did not allow me to do any kitchen work of any kind except in the cooking. And in other words, no physical labor of any kind was I permitted to do because of this wounding situation. And then after a while I went to see, sick call, a prisoner, an MD, a medic from South Africa. I don't know, I'm in the medical corps, of course, but whatever he served, he was captured, I think, at Dunkirk or somewhere, I don't know. But he was up there, and he, didn't have any x-rays, in a prison camp. They didn't have such a thing. Or if they did, they weren't going to waste them on you. I mean, you have to be halfway dead or something. So anyway, they said it's just muscular atrophy, which won't show up in an x-ray anyway. And he said, it'll be fine. So would you believe that I never had any x-rays taken of my neck until the guy later on when I was getting out of this service with 18 million points. So basically that's what happened. I did whatever chores I was asked to do and volunteered to do anything else. And your basic social activity was either playing bridge, and my bunk was the top bunk, as a result of which I probably got asthma increase from the smoke, because you had unlimited cigarettes. I never saw so many cigarettes in my life. And My job was basically to try to entrap the German workmen. If and it was a very bastard German, believe me, I couldn't understand half of what they spoke to me. But for some reason or other, my Yiddish was understandable. And of course, since they had work people from all over the country, you couldn't be classified as a East Prussian or something like they would before the war, because everybody was mixed up. So it would seem that they would understand me more than I could understand them. So anyway, if they needed a radio tube, or they needed anything that was contraband, anything at all that the Germans didn't want us to have, we would entrap these guys. And they would instruct me as to what to do, you know. And we would get the guy out, either a window repair guy or some kind of a repair guy, or we'd short out the electricity, whatever it was. We would give them chocolate bars, regular coffee, a can of Nescafe, which was worth its weight in gold, and on the black market. Maybe this guy sold it, maybe he drank it, I don't know. But in the meantime, we would have records, so such and such. I even think we made the bastard sign a receipt for it. I don't know. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But it's very hazy, except that we would confront him the next time he came around. In other words, we kept track of his name. Oh, we always said, "Was ist dein Name? Wir wollen gedenken." So anyway, we thought of what, you know, we want to remember so we can ask for you the next time because you do such marvelous work. In the meantime, oh yeah, because naturally, this is where he got all the goodies. So we had his name down, and when we said, we said, we'd like to, if you can get this guy, very good, because he's very fast. And they wanted to hear that. See, he was fast. He says, he gets in and he gets out right away. And he says, you know, it's great. You know, we need our electricity. So anyway, second time the guy would come around, we'd say to him, okay. I mean, I don't know how they, of course, my German was better, you know, I mean, because I was using it all day long, you know. And I would practice, you know, we'd have German classes and stuff. And in the meantime, it worked out that we'd grab him and we'd say, okay, now there's all of us around here, and we got your name, and we're going to testify that you took contraband from us. And now, yeah, what's for? Oh, 999, because they'll kill him. You know, they just like that. They don't give a shit. Or they thought they, you know, who knows what he would. So in the meantime, we want a radio tube. Or we want a transistor. We want a resistor. Or we want something, you know, or we want an electric light bulb insert or something like that. You know, see, what we could do is, for years ago, they had plugs that you would screw in the plug, and you would use the regular plugs. I'm trying to make myself clear. I don't know whether I am or not. You would use the two AC plugs, but you didn't have any AC deals at all. So the thing is that you would have to have an AC to plug into the hole where the light goes in. The light socket, you had to have half of that. You had to have the female portion, very good, the female portion, so you could plug the AC thing in. And whether you use that for a radio or for some kind of appliance, anything that was illegal or immoral, we would fix things up. And because it was a little less dangerous than just having a alligator clip onto the scraped AC line or whatever. So that's how we built up our supply of radios and crap like that. Or maybe the BBC or the British or somebody, they would always have something, you know, I don't remember how the hell it worked out. 40 years ago, Jesus. But we kept a supply of radios, and they'd find one, and then you go to another, you'd get it from another place, you know. And this went on. Lovely life, I mean lovely, compared to what we were through in the next 2 or 3 places. Marvelous. So we, this was Stalag 3. Of course, we didn't know that they were going to write this famous book, you know, and the thing, and it was hush-hush, you know, it was whispered about. They didn't want us to make. However, there was to be no mass escaping from any of these camps anymore, because the Germans gave us Achtung, they gave us these big red posters. And they said, once you leave the confines of the Stalag, you are no longer subject to the Geneva Convention, but you were subject to the laws of Germany. And practically 100% of all the crimes committed in Germany by the civilian population are punishable by death. Firing squad, noose, gas, whatever, injection, whatever you want to call it, you know. So they said, look, they're not, you know, let's not be stupid about this, you know. So if individually, if you want it on your, we are suggesting that no more mass, you know, 40, 50, 100 people escaping and, you know, creating a havoc. Because it was just a matter of time. This was before the Battle of the Bulge. And so in the meantime, this comes December.
Well, why you should fill in the viewers of why you're saying this, because of what mass escape wasn't.
The Great Escape,
right.
the book and the movie with Steve McQueen, James Garner. Anybody hasn't seen it, let them go out and
but
rent the film.
It's not fiction though, that book, is it?
Yeah, every book is fiction. Every movie is fiction.
But it's based upon a real event.
Absolutely real.
At that prison camp.
Yes, at that prison camp, right. And it was over. It was over in East Prussia at the time when you and I and Mother and the rest of us were there. No way to get there, you know, except by going, you know, way out of our. And who the hell wanted to stay in Germany that long? And I didn't have any. The minute that we left there, the minute that camp was abandoned, it was immediately just completely destroyed, you know, because the Russians were coming. That's another story. And as a reminder, I can remember a very pleasant Christmas, December the 25th, 1944. Very pleasant. The Americans had been shipping in turkey, canned turkey, in these Red Cross parcels for weeks, so that even the most isolated camp got their Christmas turkey. And the Germans, the Luftwaffe was not, oh God, compared to the Wehrmacht or something, you know what I mean? You know, they laughed when they called it the country club of prison camps, compared to what these GIs had in out here at camp, wherever it was out here, the park, at the something park out here.
Papago Park?
Papago Park, you know, the prison camp out there, you know, was very, very, very plebeian, very rough in detail. But it was a hell of a lot better than anything that the Germans provided, even in an officers' camp. See, oh, by the way, they had officers' camp and non-com officers' camp. And I think here, were they all officers? I don't know. I don't know. But they didn't work, so they got in a lot of mischief. But that's why we were treated so nicely, because of the hundreds of thousands of POW they had. We had. From the Africa Corps. Nobody in Europe could feed them, so the United States fed them. And it made a great bargaining chip, And so time went by, and the Russians are getting very close. Very close.
How do you know that?
Huh?
How did you know that?
The BBC. Mm-hmm. BBC. The only time the BBC and the German radio were exactly perfect was the Battle of the Bulge. Not perfect, they were synchronized. Word for word, as if the Germans were listening to the BBC and had reproduced it, or whether we were listening to the Oberkommando de Wehrmacht, and we reproduced that. They were exactly almost the same. See, they put the bulletins up every day of the Wehrmacht, the army. They had that up in the headquarters of the where all the bulletin boards, their Adler magazines, all kinds of propaganda they had there. And so all of a sudden the Russians are getting close. They were 20 miles a day, away, 20 miles a day, 20 miles away. The Russians we were on the Oder River, on the other side. We were this side of the Oder River. You look it up sometime. Z-A-G-A-N, Poland, Zagan. It was Saga, S-A-G-A-N, East Prussia, before the war. So anyway, we're being warned. Go out and get into shape. You may have to march. It's like 0 or 10 below 0. And it's cold out there. We got on our sweaters and our coats and stuff like that. And but I was in bad shape. I mean, I had chilblains on the bottom of my feet. I don't know what chilblains are, except that they turn your calluses or your skin black. Your feet. Have you ever heard of chilblains? Your feet are, well, of course, in Turkey and stuff like that, you wouldn't hear them. You were heated up, not chilled. At any rate, and they allowed people to register. People, men, soldiers. If you felt you couldn't make the trip, the Swiss Red Cross, and it was actually the Red Cross, had set up a headquarters where you could register that you were and sign an affidavit that you're unable to walk for X number of miles, and they put you down. And I went over and I signed up. I couldn't make it. So we are watching a performance of You Can't Take It With You in the theater.
What date?
December 29th. January 29th. January 29th, 1945. Sitting there in the theater, all of a sudden our camp commander, Colonel Goodrich, I'm asking you as if he knows, but I had mentioned it previously. Colonel Goodrich got up on the stage. He told him, lower the curtain. Men, he says, we have 1/2 hour to evacuate the camp. The Russians are coming close. The Germans want us out. So we are stunned, almost as badly as I am now. Didn't know what the hell to do. It was 10 o'clock at night. There wasn't a star in the sky. It was cloudy. It was snowing, colder, which is you know what. And we all went back to get our clothing. Put on an extra, we had our sweater on, then we put on our coat, GI coat, and then we got a GI blanket. In the GI blanket, we put in a couple of light material pants and a couple of shirts and some canned goods. We were detailed canned goods out of the locker. You take this, you take this. Didn't know what the hell we were doing. And we're ready. We're ready to march, you know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I never was bright, you know. And some guy pops in, is there a Tenenbom here? I says, yeah, me. He says, get your ass over to the to barracks number so-and-so and so-and-so. I says, fine. Went over, and they, oh, here's Tenenbom, check him off. He's one of the last. And we were kept behind. And these guys, oh, Jesus, they marched out. 10 below, I don't know what that was, snowing, 2 feet of snow on the ground. We had been putting grease on the same, these are the shoes I was given after we ditched the Adriatic 1,000 years ago. Those are the same shoes. And, well, of course, that was only, that was in June, June the 30th. We did June the 30th, and we ditched. And I was shot down in July, so it was only a month that I'd had the shoes when I was shot down. They ain't going to give you any new shoes up there unless you're unless they're coming apart. These were good pairs of GI shoes. They were the top 3 or 4 areas buckled, and then the rest of it was tie. And so anyway, here I am, and they checked me over, and the guy, they saw my black feet, and they saw the fact that I had been injured, and I had had this thing taken off and stuff. He's, okay, keep him here. They had some doctor of some kind, I don't know who it was. It wasn't the same schmuck that told me I had muscle. And then, oh, the British were being evacuated at the same time as us, you know. And every once in a while there'd be a little communication across the barbed wire. And the British. And so they were always devils, and they moved us all over to the British compound, which was across the way to the north. And sure enough, they torched one of the barracks, filled it full of junk, and they torched the barracks.
Why?
Just to be mean.
Uh-huh.
In other words, anything to annoy the Germans. And the British had a very Don Juan type, or whatever you wanted to call it. They were, you know, they're very but they were always acting up. You know, what kind of mischief can they get into, or mischief? You know. So here it is, the barracks right next to us, burning like crazy. And we went back to sleep. We were far enough that they weren't going to catch, you know, and there was no wind to speak of. So anyway, that we woke up the next day, and these were all charred. I have all kinds of pictures. I don't know where they are. Maybe somebody, I don't know if anybody will have the patience when I'm gone to look through all this shit, but somewhere there's a whole box. I think we lost it already before there was a guy up the street dying of lung cancer, and I brought it up to him to watch for a few days, and his wife swore that she brought him back. So here we are, 200 fellas in a camp that housed probably 20,000 people. We ate 24 hours a day. We were in 2 or 3 barracks, 3 or 4 or 5 to a barracks, and we were in the British side. Cloth windows matching the napkins on the table. Silverware, you know, silver plate. Brand new RAF shirts that had never been worn, and the guy had a blue crayon. "Too late, Uncle Joe. Stalin." A message to the Russians. Because they didn't know that we were going to use their... So some guy kept the shirt. Hell, it fit him perfectly, you know. There wasn't... We'd go into a room, and it would be chest high with English cigarettes. They would smoke them when they could get Camels and Lucky Strikes. And so we were there, and we were there for 10 days. Some of us got sick from overeating. And I think we'll probably shut this frame off, because eventually the train was set up. They found a train with about 245 or 6, maybe 6 cars, and they put 30 some odd guys to a car, I don't remember, and they took the bottom of these cars, the floors of the cars, and they layered it with huge crates of Red Cross parcels. I think there was, maybe 25 cartons of Red Cross parcels, food parcels. No, there were 25 parcels into each carton, that was it. And then they stacked these cartons all around and then put straw on top. So you were warm from the bottom because you didn't have, there was no heat in the car, of course. But at least you had nothing coming in from the floor. And then you had your Red Cross blanket, and you had your overcoats and stuff like that, and you laid in that. You had a couple of pee buckets, and I guess when the train stopped in the station or somewhere, everybody got out and just defecated on the tracks. Hey, nix, nix, nix. So the guy mush scheisen. So they did that, you know, and of course the pee, they just poured it out the door as the train went by. And needless to say, it took us 6 days to be transported from Sagan to Nuremberg. And as we were driven, I think, or maybe we walked, I don't remember. The train the station was right down there, you know, that is going in. You've seen them going into these extermination camps. They go right into the camp. I think this one went right into the camp also. And so here we are. We're on our way, and we see thousands of villagers from Sagan and around running in to empty out the warehouses.